In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front armature bearing O-ring on a Makita grinder. The front armature bearing O-ring forms a seal between the front armature bearing and the grease portion of the gearbox. It's possible that the O-ring can go bad and allow some oil or grease to leak into the armature area. If this occurs, you'll want to replace this O-ring. Replacing it is easy to do, and I'm going to show you how. O-rings, as well as many other parts, can be found on our website. Let's get started. I'll begin by removing the side handle and the guard. The gearbox housing is held in place with 4 screws. I'll go ahead and remove those. Now I can remove the rear housing. It's held in place with a single screw. Now I'll move the brush springs to the side of the brush holder. This will remove the tension from the brushes so they're not pressing against the armature. I'll do this on both sides. With the tension removed from the brushes, now I can go ahead and remove the armature assembly. Now I'll remove the drive gear. It's secured with a nut. Now I'll remove the front armature bearing and the gear housing cover from the armature. To do that, I'll place the cover in the open jaws on my vise. Then using a rubber mallet, I'll tap the armature shaft away from the bearing. With the armature removed, now I can remove the bearing from the gear housing cover. To do that, I'll again place the cover on the vise jaws, and I'll use a socket that has a diameter that's the same as the inner race diameter on the bearing. I'll go ahead and tap the bearing away from the cover. With the bearing removed, now I can go ahead and remove the front bearing O-ring from the cover. I'll use a pick to do this. Now I can install the new front bearing O-ring. Just slide it down into the groove inside the cover. Now install our front armature bearing. I'll place into the gear housing cover, and this time use a socket that has a diameter the same as the outer race on the bearing to tap it into place. Now I can install the gear housing cover assembly back onto the armature. I'll seat the bearing back onto the armature shaft using a socket that has a diameter the same as the diameter on the inner bearing race. Now I can reinstall the drive gear and secure it with the nut. Now I can install the armature assembly back into the grinder. I'll reinstall the gear housing assembly to the motor assembly and secure it with the 4 screws. Now reposition the brush spring back over the brush. Now I'll slide the rear cover back over the motor housing and secure it with the screw. Then I'll finish up by installing the guard and the side handle.